Hi guys. This week we're going to talk about writing great action lines in your screenplays. We have scene headings, we have dialogue, we have action lines. I talk about this a little bit. There's another video that I'll put on the videos that appear at the end called Directing on a Page. That's specifically about how you can direct on a page without going zoom in or whatever. And that covers across on some action lines. But these are some things to consider when thinking about writing action lines. The big overarching one, a lot of the time, is think of the vocabulary and the feel of the screenplay you're writing. I have read a few screenplays for people where, let's say it's a romantic comedy, but all their action lines read like they're out of a gangster film. They're all short, lots of profanity that doesn't fit with the feel of the piece. If you're writing something from the romantic era, or it's an Elizabethan type story, a Victorian era, your action line should describe things in that feel. It'll keep your reader in the zone, in the pocket, in the mood, whatever it happens to be. If you're writing a hard-edged gangster type film, you can be more maybe profane if you're that sort of person, but it can be more, gangstery in its feel and in its mode and the vocabulary. It hit him. The realization was like a smack in the face. Is more of a gangster line than if you're writing sort of like a Downton Abbey quote thing. You could say the realization was devastating, or it shook her to her core, rather than it was like being bitch slapped by the truth. Try to keep the vocabulary, the feel, the tone of your action lines the same as the one in your film. Sort of hint number one. Short is always best. If you can also leverage things that we already know. If we've already seen a bank robbery, we know that there's a silent alarm. You don't have to explain what a silent alarm is. You just say the bank teller carefully reaches underneath and presses the silent alarm button. You don't have to then go on, and this will trigger, no. Or, that sort of thing. If we can pre-use ideas, if we know what a busy restaurant looks like, we could just sort of say the hum of a busy restaurant, full tables. If we know that what a crowded street looks like, we can just sort of, or if you want to be a little bit more elaborate with that, you can sort of say, people are moving like water. The street is so crowded that everyone is moving like a herd of cattle. But we know what a herd of cattle looks like. You don't have to describe that. You can use shorthand. You can use things that we already know exist as metaphors. But a short line is always best. Don't go overly describing how her coat blows in the wind. Just say it blows open. Or it flaps behind her like a cape if you want to be a little bit artistic. But don't, talk about the leaves in the streets blowing around on a winter's day as no. Short, sharp. Let people paint in their mind. If they give them too much description, you'll also describe things maybe not the way that they're seeing them. So short is always best. Also write what we actually see. Not describe a feeling. Feeling and mood are good, and action line is where you put them. But try to describe in your early drafts, or if you're early to writing, what we actually see. Okay? I have used a line in the past, I've read it a bit lately, but the script's already with someone. It's from a few years ago, where I said it was an overcast sky painting everything in tones of blue and grey. I'm a little bit embarrassed by that now. I would have now just said it was an overcast sky. Everything is dark, or everything is, dark. Yeah, dark. I would have had a better way of saying it. The whole blue and grey was me being a bit clever. I was trying to get across that cold tones, that it was a story set in winter and there was all these cold tones. But now I probably would have put, an overcast sky. It's dark, fog comes from their mouth as they talk or something. I would have found some other way of doing it, but painting everything blue and grey, a bit purple, bit of a wank. But just put what we see and the smallest description of it. It's a car crash, car parts, and debris scattered everywhere. Something short, so it's a big crash or it's a small fender bender. Very, describe that. But only just what we see. So a person can paint their picture in their mind. Place the action where it would be, not block of action, then a whole lot of dialogue and a block of action. So people don't stand there. I've said this before, so sorry if you've seen this before, if you've heard me say this before. People don't monologue at each other, they dialogue. And when people dialogue, see how I talk with my hands. When people dialogue, they tend to sort of interact. They'll do things. They don't just stand there and talk at each other. They'll move around, they'll look, they'll express, and these are all actions. These all add something to the story. So don't put a big block of action and then dueling monologues and then out of scene. Break up your dialogue with little actions. Let people see the room. And also make sure that it's not confusing. So that action, the big block at the front, if you set up a scene with a big block at the front and there's dialogue, and then people start saying things in the dialogue and you don't really remember the context of the actions at the start, it's out of context. It becomes very, very bad. So avoid the big blocks of text because they're easy to forget. People will skip over them. People will just half read them. And put them in context within the dialogue themselves. The other one too that people get really wrong is choreography, and that's why you need them in the dialogue. I was reading a script for somebody once, and he was putting, he walks past room 9, he walks past room 8, and then they were speaking in room 6, and it ruined what he was trying to achieve. Was that this detective or gangster, whoever it was, I can't remember now, I think he was a gangster, had gone, he beat up the guy at the desk, found out the room they were in, marched down to room 9, burst through the door, and they weren't in room 9. Because in reality, the couple, who were a bit psychotic, had taken hostages in room 6 and had the people tied up and were having sex in front of the people. But by saying room 9, room 6, room 9, it became very confusing. Just write down what we see, put it in context. So he gets to room 9, he heads for room 9, walk down the outside as he goes past the rooms, comes to room 9, listens, kicks the door, and the place is empty. And they were interspersing this with little shots of this couple having sex and telling us it's in room 6. But he could have told us that later on. When they leave, it's a 6 on their door or whatever. But the reveal was that it was an old couple tied up in the corner of the room over there, and they were room 6. But the part of that action too was the choreography was all over the place. He was suddenly sitting on top of the guy, then he had the guy rolled over, then somehow he'd had a knife shoved in the guy's crotch, but he was straddled the guy's chest to start with, and then had to get the guy's pants down. But when it started, he was on one side. He was on one side of the counter. So he's out. He's got he walks in. There's a big counter between him and the clerk from the motel. And then the next line he pushes him to the ground. Did he reach across and push the guy to the ground? So how did he do it? Did he jump over the counter? Did he walk around the counter? You've got to allow us some choreography that people walk up from things, jump over things. Then he pushes him to the ground. He's hit the guy a few times in the face. The guy's barely conscious. You say, tell me what room they're in. Then suddenly he's got a knife held to the guy's crotch, and the guy's got his pants off, and he's, So, but when did that happen? The action lines didn't make sense. A thing you can do, and I've done it myself, is just jump over the dialogue and just read the action lines and see if each one's well written. Don't look in the context of the film either. Is that a well written sentence? Can I make that sentence read better? And you know, punches are thrown, or there was blood spatters, blah, 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 as Jane is hit. If that sentence that probably worked a bit better, you know, put Jane at the front, you know. Jane, I'm really bad at doing this off the top of my head. You know, Jane takes a blow to the face, blood splatters up on the wall. So we know who's being hit. We get the idea of the action. So just try to restructure your sentences so they make better sense as an individual thing. Then read them in context. Then look at them in the context of the page. Look at them in the context of the scene. Do they work throughout the scene? Are they interspersed amongst the dialogue correctly? That's basically what I'm trying to say. Make sure that, start at the bottom. Is each word the right word you want to use? Are they in a sentence that's correct? Do they fit inside a paragraph? Is that paragraph a single action? That's the other thing too. People who do a big action line to go, Craig walked into a room, Craig crossed this, he got out his briefcase, he did the... So Craig enters the room. He does this. He says, he puts his briefcase on the table. He looks across at John. John says something to him. He opens his briefcase and gets out the gun. Individual little actions, small little snippets so a person could read it and get it. I tend to break paragraphs around actions. So rather than say Craig walks in the room, he crosses the room, he puts his thing on the bag on the desk, he goes around the other side of the desk, he pulls open the drawer, gets the keys, walks back around the front, opens his brief. I would break those sorts of things into little actions. So Craig enters the room, he crosses to the desk. Then something else. And then this, and then this. And so when a person reads it, they can get that image in their head. So we're talking about images now. Each paragraph should be a single image. Guys, I hope this has helped writing action lines. It's a little bit of a rant, as my ones tend to be. Like, subscribe, all those sorts of things. And until next time, keep writing. Bye, guys.